Area Trivia Challenge, Stump the Chumps, on this 21st day of April 2022. And it's been quite a while since we've matched up. COVID-19 set us all back, and I sort of stepped aside for a while. And so here we are with the refurbishing of the Stump the Chump program. And my name is Bill Keel, and I've been around a long, long time. But these guys have been around a long time, not as long as me, but this is Al Sharon, and this is Rosaire Lange. So Al, give us your Burlington pedigree.
My pedigree.
Your pedigree.
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Burlington. I worked for the state for about 40 years, and I've enjoyed every moment I've had in Burlington. And I'm glad that we're going to be talking about Burlington parks, close to my heart.
Okay. Rosaire, I've been around Burlington government a long time, and I think you're the one who worked for so many different departments during your service to the city. Is that true?
Well, a couple, three of them or so. In 1959, I went in as a full-time fireman in Burlington for 10 years. And at that time, 10 years later, I partnered up with someone and started Queen City Fire Equipment, selling fire equipment all over the northern half of Vermont, including fire stations. And then I sold out my half and went to the legislature for a couple years until the Mayor Paquette asked me to come to work for the city, which was as assistant city clerk for about 2.5 years. Then he asked me to go down to the assessor's office, where after a couple of years I was city assessor until 1990. Prior to going to work for the city, I actually was on 2 commissions in Burlington, what was called at that time the Street Commission. They were all separate. And also the Sewage Disposal Commission.
Wow.
And was chairman of each of them for a year or two. And that's when I had to leave that when I went to work for the city. But then after I left the city, I always, for I don't know, 15 years or more, was an inspector of election out in Ward 4. So I've been around the city doing different things for a number of years.
Wow. Okay. Viewers, if you have a question to Stump These Chumps and you want to call in, call 802-862-3966. You might have a question for us, or you might have to share an incident, because we're going to talk about as Al said, talk about the Burlington Parks and Recreation System. And I even brought my hat. I had lunch yesterday with Cindy White, who is the current director of Parks, Recreation, Waterfront, and anything else that floats. So if you have an incident you want to share with us, give us a call. Again, we're going to talk about Burlington recreation areas, our parks, our beach, our bike path. So, Rosaire, growing up in Burlington or being in Burlington, what's your favorite park, and what did you do in that park? Your favorite thing?
Well, in the early to mid 50s or so, I grew up in the Old North End, and almost every night in the winter we were at Roosevelt Park, where they had a good-sized warming hut with a pot-belly stove, and ice skated there every night. And about 9 o'clock, after the young kids left, they would put on music, and you could actually skate with the girls. And back then, it was like a rhythm type of skating that you did, almost like a dance. And that was a lot of fun. And then when it was time to close up, there was 2 or 3 of us that skated pretty well. We would help the maintenance guy to use the shovels and clear the ice off of all the snow and stuff so that he could put out the hoses and freeze it. That's kind of what they did. Down at the south end, what was South Park back then started from Pine Street, all the way up to what you know as Callahan Park now.
Right.
That upper part was all part of South Park, and up in that upper part is where they had a warming hut and ice skating, just like Roosevelt during that time. Years later, it became Little League, and as you know, it does today. Down below was the baseball field where a lot of softball leagues played. There was a big grandstand there that got taken down several years ago. But those were the two primary parks in the city outside of North Beach in the summertime for going out there for swimming. So,
Al?
Well, I like South Park. I played football, baseball down there. The high schools played down there. I also like Smalley Park because I hit a grand slam home run off from Julie Melanson's house, which was down the left field line. And so that's always been dear to my heart. But no, and Battery Park, I've always liked because of the sunsets there. Yeah. Rudyard Kipling said, if you want to enjoy a sunset, go to Battery Park in Burlington. And he's right. And my wife Ann and I go frequently to see sunsets at Battery Park.
To this day?
To this day.
Well, as I said, I had lunch with Cindy White, and that's one of my causes is to open Battery Park again to the public, but that's not very popular. But right now there's no way to get to Battery Park. You have to park it. The closest parking is in the parking garage. So I go by Overlake Park once in a while in South Burlington, and there's more people looking at the lake from Overlake Park in South Burlington as more than Burlington. You get only people within.
Well, you're way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's now.
Well, the nice part about Battery Park was when we were in our young age, there was a lot of kids that spent a lot of days in the summer there, and the cannons were always popular to jump up and sit on the cannons as if you were riding a horse. Walk the stone wall that was around there. It had a lot of activities, which now you don't see any activity because nobody can park there. And it got spoiled because a few young people with cars would park there, and there was things that the police didn't appreciate going on in those cars. And
right.
The solution was to shut down the parking there and keep people out instead of making good use of something that was a great asset to the city. And let me just follow up. You mentioned Smalley Park, and for the audience that might not know where Smalley Park is, it goes along. It's on the corner of St. Paul Street, going up Adams Street. It's not real big, but that's where the Burlington High School, when Burlington High School was down on Main and South Union Street, the baseball team every day would go down there, and that's where they did all their practicing. Some of the softball teams, leagues would play there too. But that park had a lot of use, but it was very rough. If you were doing baseball there or softball and you slid, chances are you might be going against some rough stones and something else. I remember being a catcher there for softball one night, and a guy rounded third and was heading home, and he wasn't going to get across, so I stood in front holding that ball, and man, he nailed me like a bulldozer, and I went skidding in all that rough terrain, so I remember it real well.
Well, also, you could hit a home run in center field, couldn't you? What was the name of that street that came down from
Elm Terrace.
Elm Terrace.
I saw a guy, we were playing a game with the UVM freshmen, and Jack LeMabe, who later pitched for the Pittsburgh Pirates, he was on the freshman team, and he hit a ball. He was playing first base that day for the freshmen, and he hit a ball up there on Elm Terrace.
Wow.
And I'll never forget, him hitting that ball up there. I never saw anything like that before. I mean, that's about 400 feet.
Yeah, wow.
You know, it's 400
I was
feet. there.
playing with the Mud Alley Midgets in Smalley Park. You remember the Mud Alley Midgets? Maybe you
I
folks
do.
remember the Mud Alley Midgets.
Explain where Mud Alley is.
Right. Mud Alley is Marble Avenue, Hayward Street, down sort of the halfway south end. But anyway, I was playing for Lenny Lafayette, and I was being a smarty. Somebody hit me a fly ball, and I said, "Oh, I'll try and catch it behind my back." You know, like this, the ball's coming and bent over like that. I missed it. I didn't bother to go back to the dugout because I knew didn't have a long life in the rest of that game. But getting back to the ice skating thing, that's really was a very popular sport, and
Was.
they did a lot at South Park. And when they put the lights on, that was a big deal, and it helps. And I was park superintendent about that time when a lot of that was going on. And as soon as I got that job as park superintendent, I found out that the employees, there was an alderman in Burlington at that time who sold soda, and he had glass containers. And the deal was made with the city that whatever the soda, whatever they sell, it was profit to the person who worked there. They didn't get paid for it, but they sold soda and candy with the profits going in that. Well, I stopped that big time. But so anyway,
That wasn't Champlain Beverage, was it?
Yes, it was.
We know who the element is that you're talking about.
So, but also I had another run-in with that person as well because we'll get to North Beach in a while, but you don't want glass at North Beach.
Oh my God, no.
And
That's the last thing you want.
one of your city alderman selling a container that has glass, he's not very supportive of banning glass. But that was an issue that some of the pressures sometimes that these city officials or state officials have pressures for people with special interests. We know that all the time. But anyway, that was my experience with the glass containers, and of course, we don't do that today anymore. But we did it that day.
I can verify what happens because we were frolicking down at North Beach one time with a ball, and somebody threw the ball out and it went out over the water some. So I run out and I kind of did one of these flying things for it, about 6, 8 feet out into the water. And when I landed on that 1 foot, I caught a piece of glass and on the bottom of my foot, and it was at the hospital that they had to clean it out.
Wow.
Yeah, so
right,
that is dangerous.
How about the New North End? New North End has 2 parks now. And one, the Schifferletti Park.
We have Schifferletti Park, and we have a park.
What's the other one?
There's a park down by where I live.
Apple Tree Point?
Yeah, by Apple Tree Point. And it's been dedicated to David Gurkowski.
Oh, it has.
Yeah, and has basketball court and also a play area. And it was dedicated to him because he lived close by, and he used to go over there on his own and mow the grass at the park.
Oh.
So it was a great thing, you know, when they dedicated that to him. But you can go down there and watch these kids play basketball
At this park?
at this park.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's a great park. Of course, Schifferletti Park. Charlie had been a great
Well,
organizer for Little League.
yeah, I was there when Charlie and Bill Peacock and Bob Rosenberg and some of those people, all they had was 2 dugouts. That's how they started. That was all volunteer work. And the city didn't give them any money or any support. Now today, there's what, 2, 3 good, nice ballparks out there.
Right.
Really nice ballparks.
There's 3 major ones. The third one, when you were talking about, there were 2. And then I was involved as a vice president of the Little League at the time when we built the 3rd one. And we did all the work ourselves.
Yep, all volunteers.
All volunteers. Yeah.
And that made it very successful. When I'd be umpiring baseball games, though, the fans are real close to the players. And one of the big issues was you're behind the plate calling balls and strikes, and the parents would be griping both at me, the umpire, and they tell the kids, "Oh, stand closer to the plate, get your feet together, put your." All that advice, and a poor kid playing baseball, he was harassed by that kind
8,
of
9,
stuff.
10 years old. Had to
Yeah.
listen to all of that.
And so now I think they put the fans out in center field.
Right.
And
Well, they got a couple of real nice stands out there now. They the new aluminum kind that meet the safety standards and everything else. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how about one of our lesser-known parks called Shemanski? Shemanski viewers, if you got some input here, give us a call, 802-862-3966. Now, Sharon knows a lot about Burlington, as does Rosaire Lodge. They've been around. Give us a call, 802-862-3966.
Well, Shemanski Park.
Shemanski Park.
Shemanski Park was
That's
named.
where it is.
It's down by
Gross.
where Kirby Sand Pit used to be, down around Chase Street and that area. And Ireland has built some big, quite a development in that area.
Almost a city.
And so Shemanski was owned by, the land was owned by Shemanski and then was donated to the city. And it's about 123 square acres. It connects to Centennial Field.
Wait a minute, the cemetery, you got cemetery up there. Green Mountain Cemetery?
I don't know if there's a cemetery there.
Yeah, there is.
Well,
There
Green
is.
Mountain is up the hill from there.
Up the hill.
Oh, yeah, going towards
Yeah,
Centennial
yeah.
Field.
Anyway, they used to have softball games there. So just say if you're playing at Shemanski Park, and right field is a steep hill.
Right.
So I don't know how you play softball and playing right field when it's on a slope. They didn't play there very long, but softball was a big thing in Burlington. We had the Continental League and a couple of leagues that you were talking about, Rosaire.
Yeah, the Continental, if I remember right, they were the younger crowd. You know, probably shortly after getting out of high school and up to, well, they could go to any age, but most of them were like in their 20s and early 30s, and it was serious ball that they played. The league I played in a couple years was, I think there was a minimum age of either 30 or 35. It wasn't as serious and certainly not as fast. But we played at South Park, at Letty Park, sometimes at Smalley. But softball was pretty big back in the 60s and 70s. Quite big.
Yep.
And the 50s when they had fast pitch.
Yep, slow pitch and fast pitch.
And you had Deshanes and you had McGregor's and you had a number of different teams, and they would go out of state and play, and they could fast pitch. It was really fast pitch.
It really is.
Yeah.
And people think of it kind of as a public park, but Centennial Field really belongs to UVM, but a lot of other things going on there. And if you want to talk about baseball, way back in the 40s, you had the Burlington Cardinals, which was a professional team that played there, and players from that were associated with the St. Louis Cardinals. So there was a lot of good baseball. But remember, when we're talking about those times, even in the early to mid 50s, when I was talking about going out skating every night,
Right.
it wasn't every household that had a TV. It was minimal.
no.
It was minimal because TVs were kind of expensive, and you were only getting like 3 channels, so you weren't sitting home watching TV every night. So you went out and did things. And,
Watching TV
especially on Saturdays, you were always out doing something.
Watching
If it was-
TV through the snow.
Yeah.
Now, I remember some of the skates. You had a certain 3 kinds of skates. There was ice hockey skates. There was regular skates.
Racers.
You had
Racer.
Yeah.
And what's the one with the ridges on it and the toes?
those are
Oh, figure skating.
figure
Figure
skates.
skates. Yeah.
Yeah, I always use the racer skates.
Yeah,
Oh, you were the smarty with the long blades, huh?
yeah.
Well, at Roosevelt Park, there was always a big crowd there, but there was 2 of us that were probably they considered probably the better skaters. And one, you remember Police Chief Art Karen?
Sure.
Well, he had a set of twin boys, and one of them boys was the other guy that skated with racers with me. And we'd break up, after all the young kids were gone, we'd break up and make 2 groups and play what was called dungeon, which you tag somebody and they had to go into this little ice area that we set up, and if somebody else could come through there and tag them, they'd be free. That was the kind of simple entertainment that we had back then.
There was no hockey played.
No.
Hockey was played down in Lakeside with Lefty Joyle and
Claude Armstrong.
Claude Armstrong and the those guys down there, who actually founded the kids hockey in Burlington.
Yeah.
But and you're right. You raced over at Roosevelt Park.
And when you want to talk about old parks at Lakeside, that's one of the old parks.
That's
right.
around.
Yeah.
Now, when in those days we were talking about the firewood and you go out, no matter what the temperature was, the wind, you went out and skated.
Oh, yeah.
And you came in and you warmed
up.
up again. It was sometimes really hot, and you take off your shoes and put your shoes underneath the bench, and you made sure that after you get through skating, that your shoes are still there. And of course, after everybody left,
Right.
some kids forgot their shoes. I don't know how they went home, but that was the situation. But
Of course, they used to flood that whole area. They'd get out there with their hoses, and that was quite an area there at Roosevelt Park.
Oh yeah, it was a big ring.
Yeah.
It was a big ring.
the same thing in South Park, pretty much. And Shemanski had a rink out a while. Now, do you ever hear of Champlain Street Park?
Well, yeah, well that came about from some buildings that got torn down back in.
Where'd that come from? I don't remember how the city got a hold of that.
I'd say it was.
Champlain Street Park is at the end of the south end of Champlain Street, right
Yeah.
near Maple. Is it Maple or King?
I think it's between King and Maple.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there was a building there, and I might have been as late back as the 70s or probably the early 80s when something got torn down and never got built up, and the neighborhood kind of turned it into a park, and then the city kind of took it over. I won't swear to that, but I think it's about what happened.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in the park department, it was in the 60s. That was one of my parks.
It was one then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not very big.
So it goes back further than I think. Well, they're doing a renovation of it right now.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because there's a few kids around there, but not that many. But let's see, what's another park? Leddy Park,
Well, Leddy
Park was named after Bernard Leddy, who was on the Parks Commission.
he was a
for
long
time.
time member of the Burlington Parks Commission,
Correct.
and he had lived on Stanford Road in the 40s, and he would walk in those woods over to the Burlington rendering plant, and he wanted to see a park there at some time. And so soon after his death in 1972, the Park Commission named Karenko Park in his honor. And the park was finally dedicated July 4th, 1976.
Whoa.
And that was the bicentennial year.
Oh.
And that's when it was dedicated to Bernard Leddy. And it turned out to be a great park. It was a great area, that area. When Karenko was there, you could smell it on North Avenue.
From the
And-
rendering plant.
Well, yeah, and then they had all those woods to mask it, and to cut it off.
Let me just explain what a rendering plant was. Korenko was a company. Rendering plant was where they processed animal carcasses. And the other thing they did, they had trucks that went around to all the stores.
Store
and
to
picked up-
store.
like the stores would throw all their beef trimmings and bones and stuff, because back then it didn't come all
Right.
prepared. You broke it all down and boned it out and put it in barrels. And once or twice a week, the big rendering company truck would come by and pick them up. So at that plant is where that all got boiled down. And what they'd end up making with it was industrial oils and what's the word I want? I made a note of that.
Yeah, already.
But it,
into industrial fats, oils, and such, and talon for soap, and also for fertilizer. And you can imagine what kind of smell came out of that. But it was all wooded around that area.
Yeah.
yeah.
And ironically, my brother-in-law was in a demolition building, and he's the one that tore that whole plant down and everything when it was time for it to go. And then it got turned into Letty Park, and the ice rink was built on the other side of the tracks. The rendering plant, of course, was where the parking lot is. The other side of Letty Park that was put in during the Gordon Paquette administration.
Right.
All right, let's go to North Beach. We got 5 minutes to go. We can talk about North Beach.
Yeah.
North Beach was, when I took over, it was awful. We had a terrible bathhouse, it was rickety, and we had sewage going directly into the lake, into the swimming area. And, day after July 4th weekend, you'd see feces on the shoreline and all sorts of things on the waterfront. And so when the time came whereby the school department wanted some land to put a high school right near North Beach. So we made a deal. The Parks Department had property where they administered the property where the athletic fields are. So what we did was we made a deal. School department, you put up a sewage treatment plant, and we'll turn over the athletic fields and the rest of that area, which was park area, to the school department. So that's how we get the sewage out of the lake. But for a while, we'd get the water tested to do what we could about keeping it clean, which we didn't. But I got together with the city health officer and said, doctor, this is July 4th weekend, temperature's 85 degrees. We're not gonna, if we test the water, we're not gonna win. He said, well, I'll take the test down a little bit more below the surface where it's cooler. Because people were gonna go to that beach anyway. I mean,
whether it was polluted or
not. And then the other thing was, just briefly, we had fly ash for the Moran plant, and that was flying over Lakeview Terrace, but we also had some residue, and we took trucks of that fly ash to extend North Beach. So we had a lot going there.
Yeah. And I can tell you, there was a lot of summer days that I spent down there, and for a couple of years, I was the reserve lifeguard that would get called in if they were short a lifeguard. So North Beach has a lot of fond memories. And up in the camping area, wasn't as big as the camping is now, but a lot of Canadians came and camped there.
Right.
And they were doing it with the tents and stuff, not the RVs like you see today.
That was quite a family. Even Burlington people would go to there because
Oh, yeah.
It was cheap.
It was cheap.
Yep.
It was accessible. I mean,
Sure.
And they've done a great job with North Beach.
Okay, well, good. I think, folks, I hope you enjoyed our little discussion here about the Burlington Park System. We never got to the bike path, but some of Burlington's assets are our park system, our North Beach, and certainly the bike path and the waterfront. We've come a long way since those back in the days. So, Al, Rosaire, thanks for sharing your experiences folks, thanks for looking and sharing in what we had to talk about. So we'll see you again sometime soon.
Mhm.